This week's pen is the Uniball 1, and I think this pen has potential. It's a gel pen. This one came with a 500 thou tip, which ended up being my biggest hang up with this pen. The ink doesn't come out heavy enough. For me, that's sometimes the problem with 500 thou tip pens. It does get very annoying. And when I'm trying to write quickly, it struggles. It reminds me, for anyone who's welded, it's like the wire feed, or the ink in this case, is too slow. Categorize this as personal preference, but this will hurt my rating for sure. There is hope for this pen. There are 700 thou options available. The Uniball 1 also comes in a ton of colors. I think the design quality is very attractive, the clicker is good, the silicone hand grip is useful, but above all, what sets this pen apart is the clip. It's spring-loaded. Functionality-wise, it mimics a paper clip, but it also gives you a second and quieter option to fidget with. Big fan. I'll show you the functionality at the end of the video, but it is my favorite clip by far. I'd also like to confess I missed the mark on using quill and ink for 4th of July. I have been listening, but if I'm going to do it, we're going to go all the way on that bit. More to come. In the pursuit of excellence, I want to know what your favorite pen is and try it. Put in the comments the make and model and any other details important of your favorite pen. I'll review it on next week's Race Tune-In post.
What in the fuck is that? Oh my god. Um, Thank you to Austin Cindric for the fucking boring intro. Welcome everybody to Coop Radio, back here once again for episode 21, coming off of the heels of Chicagoland 4th of July weekend. Hope everybody enjoyed a interesting 4th of July weekend of racing. That was Austin Cindric, who his spiel is he reviews pens on his Instagram feed. I just found this last week. I was going to talk about this last week, but I forgot to. But Austin reviews pens on his Instagram. He's got a lot of these every week so far, I think. No, not every week. Okay. He, for some reason, thought it was a good idea to start at Texas of this year to just start reviewing pens. And you wonder why any single solitary person with a personality who is a casual fan of the sport doesn't give a single shit about anybody but like two people. Because this is the majority. This is everybody else. This is who everybody else is. Maybe not to this autistic-esque level, but this is the type of person. This is it. This is what you got. This is the guy who drives the most recognizable car for Penske or for Team Penske. This is the guy who drives the most recognizable number 2 car out of that camp, which, by the way, is supposed to be the number 1 Ford team. This is the best we have to offer. Holy shit. Anyways, besides that, not too much news from this past weekend, so most of the talk will be about what happened racing-wise from this past weekend. I'm going to make up for it since I very much skipped over the race talking about Sonoma on last week's episode, which, if you haven't seen last week's episode, I highly suggest that you go do it. Granted, it is one singular topic that I talked about, but it is a very important topic that covered a lot of branches of that one singular thing. So, I highly suggest anybody and everybody go back and listen to last week's episode, which I believe I titled The Definitive Carson Hocevar Rant. That I think is worth the hour and a half plus that episode was to listen to the whole thing. So, that being said, let's dive into a couple of things I really wanted to talk about from this past weekend. Number one, obviously, I think overall it is pretty obvious in my eyes that it was a much better idea if you want to do a race in Chicago, that doing it at the Oval was the 1000% better idea that anybody and everybody with eyes would have known. When these cars first came out, the next-gen cars, it was known very quickly that these things pivoted very hard away from what the Gen 6 cars were. The Gen 6 cars were much more entertaining when it came to short tracks, and road courses. And when it came to the 1.5 miles and the regular D-shaped ovals, not as much fun to watch. Bit more boring. A lot of people didn't like the package that they had. Therefore, races weren't as entertaining. As we pivoted to the Gen 7 car, the current car that we have now, it is the complete opposite. The short tracks are unbearably boring to watch, no matter how hard they have tried to change and tweak these things with the car. It has not been able to solve it, and it won't be able to solve it. I believe that it would take a true redesign from top to bottom to fix short track racing when it comes to this car. This car that also very much emulates an IMSA car or some type of sports car. Therefore, you would think with that design and with that idea in mind, it would be extremely fun and entertaining to watch on road courses. It has been the opposite. Most road courses, not all, but most road courses have been kind of somewhat boring, pretty tough to pass, tougher than even the Gen 6 cars, and not nearly as fun as the previous generation of cars when it came to road courses. Some people would chalk that up to, well, it's just SVG rolling in there, just destroying everybody. Even take SVG out. There's large gaps between everybody to where it's pretty tough to find actual somewhat close racing on the track. But these things are, weirdly enough, great at 1.5 miles as far as just a pure entertainment value for the fan. If you ask me, and this is coming from somebody who is a diehard fan, who likes a particular type of racing when it comes to not just, 1.5 miles, but any sort of racing that the sport offers. But even more so specifically when it comes to D-shaped ovals, 1.5 miles, mile tracks, the tracks like Darlington, or even as big as like a Michigan. I want these things to go fast enough or to be out of control enough to where you have to have some type of brake input going into said corner. Does not matter if it is Vegas. Does not matter if it is Chicagoland. It does not matter if it's Charlotte. Doesn't matter where you go. The package, in my eyes, in my opinion, should be fast enough and out of control enough to where when you go into turns 3 and turns 1 at any given D-shaped oval that's 1.5 miles or more, you should have to apply the brakes in some way, shape, or form, or have to really get out of the gas and really woe the car down enough in order to make it through the corner. And what people know and understand is that allows for true comers and goers. It allows for more passing. It allows for the cream to really rise to the top, and for however fast you are, you really can make up that time if you just so happen to make a mistake. It felt to me, even though I thought the racing was good, I enjoyed this past weekend's racing at Chicagoland. I won't shit on it. I had fun for both races. Both the O'Reilly Series and the Cup Series races I thought were fun to watch. But that being said, when it comes to the Cup cars, the most important car here in this equation, I still don't like the idea of going to 1.5 miles and the only thing you have to do is one of two things. Either one, get out of the gas completely for a very short amount of time and then get back into it immediately with no brakes. Or B, never even have to get out of the brakes or get out of the gas at all. And always have some type of throttle input put into it in order to try to be fast. That shit I still hate. It still bugs me. Because it is a small reminder of the former 550 package that we used to have, or, the former stupid racing that we've been seeing at mile and a halfs when it comes to the Cup Series, that we don't have enough horsepower in these cars to allow them to have to get on the brakes going into the corners in order to try to even make the corner. To me, it takes away skills that are needed in order to try to race a car. I don't like the guy, but out of anybody and everybody right now within the Cup Series, I don't believe that there's anybody better at saving tires for a long run than Denny Hamlin. He is obviously the most experienced, 20 plus years in NASCAR, in Cup. So it's expected that he's going to be the most experienced when it comes to any facet of the sport. And a lost art or a dying part of this sport when it comes to the Cup Series is seemingly having to save tires. It has not been nearly as important the last how many years when it comes to the Cup Series. You ride that sucker as hard as you can, because it doesn't matter how much tire you save or how much time you try to sit back and wait or whatever in order to try to make up that time at the end. It doesn't ever materialize for those people. It doesn't ever come. So you have to be on the throttle 100% all the time. And to me, that takes away skill. That takes away finesse. That takes away something that is important in order to show who really is the best, who really is the most talented, who really does have the best car. It's pretty easy to show up with X setup that's similar to the guys around you and play the track position game, because you're all kind of doing the same kind of throttle tracing and you're all driving the same. Back in the day, back in the day, always better back in the day. But it is true, back in the day, some people ran for the short run and some people ran for the long run. That was a part of strategy. If you thought, hey, we think we might have a chance of, there's been a lot of cautions or whatever. There's kind of been caution after caution every 20, 30, 40 laps or whatever during a race. We think we're going to get another caution here during this green flag run. Hey, let's push it a bit here, gain a bunch of spots, and maybe try to catch a caution to where we use all those tires up and it gains us a bunch of time, bunch of spots. And it would either work for them or it wouldn't work for them, but regardless, it doesn't matter. It was a part of the sport. Now it's just everybody goes 100%. Everybody's doing the same thing. And that's where, again, it's more so on how good is your car set up rather than how talented are you really behind the wheel. This is why the only opportunity that you really get to see true talent outshine the equipment, or where talent really shines through in this car, is at road courses when it comes to SVG. I don't think anybody would sit here and try to make the argument that Trackhouse is anywhere close to a competitive car when it comes to competing for wins or competing for top fives or competing for top tens on a consistent basis. Yet, 2 out of those 3 drivers, when it comes to almost any road course that we have gone to this entire season, the 88 and the 97 have consistently outran, my opinion, their equipment. I don't believe that they just don't have it when it comes to mile and a half, super speedways, short tracks, mile tracks, whatever. But yet when it comes to the road courses, they just got something dialed in there to where the car is so good. No, it's the driver, very obviously. And I just wish that would shine through more when it comes to mile and a half tracks or 2 mile tracks like a Michigan or short tracks or something. I just wish that would shine through more with this car. And at the end of the day, is it possible? I believe so. But it would take a lot of adjustments. Number one being more horsepower. To force guys to have to get on the brakes in order to just make the corner. Not just a like, oh, we're saving tires and that's why we're hitting the brakes. No, you have to hit the brakes because you're going so fast into the corner that if you don't hit the brakes and you just get off the gas at your normal off throttle time, you're just going to slide up the track and hit the wall because you're going so fast compared to how fast you were going before. And you're going to completely kill your right front and whatever. So maybe is it a old man yelling at the clouds kind of thing? Maybe. I mean, I'm not exactly an old man. I'm only 26, so it's not like I'm sitting here, 50-some-year-old man. Back in my day in the fucking 80s, it was so much better. Like I'm not doing that, but there's a level of skill that is taken out of the sport when elements of what separates one driver from another driver, when those certain elements during a race are taken away, those little things that a driver needs to do better than the guy next to him in order to try to be better, when that is taken away, the skill level in order to be successful here is less than. And then therefore, less skilled guys find more success. And I think also at the same time, that's why certain teams are willing to let go of people quicker than maybe they normally would have. If the skill level is less than, or the expectations are less than, well, we can just go find somebody else who will try to hit those marks and maybe get lucky and run well enough. There's no real separation there. If you get one win or two wins, we could probably find somebody else who will do that as well, and maybe cheaper. So, that being said, I did enjoy Chicagoland. I didn't think it was a terrible race, like I said earlier. I think it was, without a shadow of a doubt, the better decision to pivot away from the Chicago street course and go back to Chicagoland. It's funny, some of the DBC guys weeks ago were talking about, all these fans begging for Chicagoland, but yet we still hear that there's tickets available and that's not selling real well. Well, it turned out it was a sold out show. According to TNT, they said it was sold out. So I know the Chicagoland isn't exactly, downtown Chicago, and we need to be in downtown Chicago in order for anybody to come. No, you just need to put on a decent product and the people will come. You don't need to be in the middle of the goddamn city of a major metropolitan area in order to get fans to show up to an event. If you put on a good enough show, if you put on a good enough product, people will come. At Chicagoland, I never felt like it was a bad product. Maybe during the Gen 6 era. But again, Chicagoland is just like any other D-shaped oval. There's small, minor tweaks that are different than any other D-shaped oval, but it's still 1.5 miles that's still shaped the exact same. Besides the backstretch being weirdly curved, it's still the same layout, same everything. I mean, it was just the car. The car was the reason why we didn't see good racing there. Now, is it like that with every 1.5 miles? No, I think Texas is the exception of that. But two corners that are the same banking and same shape as any other 1.5 miles, like a Kansas or a Charlotte or Las Vegas or whatever. You just need to put out decent cars with decent drivers and you'll get a good product. It's a tried and true method that's been done 1,000,000 times before and will be done 1,000,000 more times until the sport's death. And it will work every time. As long as you provide the externals that are going to work for it. As long as you provide a good car and good drivers, you're going to get a good product. And then therefore people will show back up. Should Chicagoland stay on the schedule? Absolutely. I don't see why anybody would want it off. I understand, again, why people in the previous gen car thought, oh, we need to get rid of some of these D-shaped ovals and go to more short tracks and go to more road courses. Well, now that we've gone to the Gen 7 car, it's completely pivoted away from that. We need less road courses. We need less short tracks. We need more mile and a halves. There's a reason why Rockingham is being thought about being brought back up. There's a reason why we went back to Chicagoland. It's because these regular ovals provide better racing with this current gen car. And who knows? In 5, 6, 7 years, whatever it is, when we go to a different generation car and we go to the Gen 8, God knows whatever the hell that's going to produce, it might swing back the other way. The pendulum might swing back the other way. But for right now, we do not need to go out and waste millions upon millions of dollars doing a race in downtown Chicago, blocking off streets and traffic and all this other stuff for a weekend where you end up coming out in the red, not in the black, but in the red, and not putting on the greatest racing event anyways that you could have done, again, in the same area. It is the exact same argument that I've already made when it came to San Diego a couple weeks ago. Why are we wasting money on a road course, a street course that is, temporarily, that we may not go back to next year? It's not a guarantee. And put all this money into something that is a rental versus just putting money into something that we already own as a sport, as the sport owns, which is that area in Fontana, California, where Auto Club used to be. Why didn't we put that money into that? You know, we waited all these years of going to the Coliseum and saying, oh, we need a racetrack in California, blah, blah. And then you basically just dropped the ball on the short track that you were going to build. And again, I get it. Short track is not exactly the recipe for success when it comes to this car, but it's still a smarter business decision to put money into something that you own, build something that you now can make into whatever you want and do whatever you want with it. And then it's still there the year after that and the year after that and the year after that. And you don't have to waste all this money to rebuild it again. And then even still, you can say, okay, the car that we have right now isn't exactly conducive for the best short track racing, but we can try our best to change the car in certain ways, rebuild the car, try to make a different package, try trial and error things to where then the racing there will actually be fun and entertaining. And now, hey, look at that. Not only have you made a short track in California, you know, the major area that you want racing to be in because it's such a major market for you, you've also made a permanent, not temporary, but a permanent track there in California that's fun and entertaining for people to watch. And you've fixed short track racing for all the short tracks, for Bristol, for Martinsville, because if it works at whatever short track you're going to make in Fontana, California, it would probably have worked at Martinsville, probably worked at Bristol, probably would have worked at Richmond, probably would have worked at any other short track that you categorize as a short track. So, just saying, don't waste your money. And I think that maybe hopefully this is a wake-up call to them. That maybe, hey, we learned, okay, it was a cool idea in theory, in fantasy world, to be like, let's just do you know how we do in the video games? You know how like in the video game back in the day, you could race in the streets of New York or whatever? Like that, there's that old NASCAR Thunder game or whatever, where like you could race in, or that EA Sports NASCAR game. I don't think it was a NASCAR Thunder game. It was past NASCAR Thunder, but there was an old NASCAR game that was made by EA that you could like race in downtown certain cities, like New York or something like that. It's a cool idea in theory, in fantasy world, but to do it in reality, it doesn't exactly translate. And it doesn't exactly work as far as the actual audience that you have. The actual audience that you have just wants this. It just wants what we got this past weekend. I hadn't seen anybody complaining about this race. Everybody liked it. Everybody enjoyed it. Everybody had fun. As far as what I've seen. So I don't think it's a hard decision to go back to Chicagoland next year, and probably the year after that, and the year after that, and going forward. Chicagoland should just be on the schedule from now on and should never have probably been taken off. Speaking of Chicagoland, though, there was a couple of stuff that happened in both the O'Reilly Series races and the Cup Series races that I want to get into. But the number one thing I wanted to get into is something that's been happening for weeks on track that I haven't really addressed. And if I have, I've only kind of half addressed it. So the Cup Series race started. If you didn't watch, I'll give you a rundown as far as how this thing started. Normal start to the race, nothing too crazy. And then lap 1, backstretch. Once again, we had a very early wreck. And over the last, feels like last how many weeks? And it's not been every week. Especially the last 2 weeks, obviously road courses, it's been a little bit different, but the last how many ovals that we've raced at. There's been one guy who has seemingly wrecked like extremely early. And by extremely early, I mean like this past weekend was lap 1. Previous times it's been lap 2 or 3 or lap 5 sometimes at the latest. And wrecks as in like wrecking into the inside wall and the day is over. Or just hitting something to where something's broke so bad that his day is basically over and the car is destroyed and he's going to finish last no matter what. And it is, of course, Connor Zilisch. He has... I can't even remember the last time somebody has had this bad of a rookie season in a while. I'm not saying he's had the worst rookie season that has ever existed. Maybe if I go back in the annals of history when it comes to the Cup Series, I could find somebody that has had a worse rookie season than Connor Zilisch. But it's got to be up there in like one of the worst so far. He has speed. He has speed when it comes to the road courses. It has been so obvious. And even at the road courses, he has been at times spun, not of his doing. Somebody just flat out, like Coda is a perfect example. He got spun twice going into turn 1 on one of those restarts. And both times he made up a ton of time after being spun and then having to basically restart from the very back again, and had all that speed and was able to make up a bunch of time. And like, I don't know if he finished in the top 10, but there were plenty of times where he got spun, ran up through the entire field, and then got back into the top 10 again. So the skill is there. And then even the times where he doesn't wreck off the jump, when it comes to ovals, it has been a real struggle where at best he's running just outside the top 30. He's 31st, 32nd, 33rd, somewhere around there most weekends when it comes to just regular ovals. And it's not discriminatory. It's the 2 miles, it's the 1.5 miles, it's the mile tracks, it's the short tracks. It's anything and everything in between. There's no speed there. And the thing is, and I talked about this weeks ago when it was announced that Jesse Love was getting the opportunity to race for Wood Brothers. And I said, look, it has been well documented that the guys who come through the O'Reilly series are very much so behind the 8 ball when it comes to guys who are coming through the truck series, jumping the O'Reilly series and going straight to Cup. And it is simply because of the simple fact that when you're driving the trucks, it is much more similar to the Cup cars as far as the style of driving that is necessary to be successful. Whereas the O'Reilly Series car is so different in so many different ways, as described on so many different podcasts by different people, both not racing the car or have raced the car. It is well documented at this point that if you are coming through the O'Reilly Series, it's going to take a minute for you to get used to racing like this. SVG has gone on record saying, besides me getting used to the country as a whole and getting just used to the tracks in general, I wish I would have been thrown in the deep end and just thrown into a Cup car right off the jump and not even wasted the year in the O'Reilly Series, because I learned nothing about racing. I had to hit the reset button all over again going from the O'Reilly Series to Cup because they're so different. And that is not exclusive to him. That is across the board. And it is showing. Most importantly, in my opinion, between the two prime examples that we can point to right now. And some people might say, well, there's the it's Trackhouse versus 2311. 2311's on a hot streak right now. They're doing great, and Trackhouse is awful. Take away how bad the teams are doing versus or how bad Trackhouse is doing as a whole, and how good 2311 is doing. When you watch a race every week, when Corey Heim is out there, he has not only ran, just like this past weekend in Chicagoland, near the top 10 or at the top 10 or leading laps or like he did in San Diego, winning races. And he's found speed comparatively to his teammates. Take away, like I said, take away the win. In the other weeks where he has ran, he has found comparative speed to the teammates that he has of the 23, the 45, and the 35. Connor hasn't. Even for as bad as Ross Chastain has been this year compared to years prior, the speed is not even close to what Ross is doing on a regular basis, on a average basis when it comes to ovals. And even SVG, somebody who has came from Connor, comparatively, yes, has a lot of good road course ability, but came through the ARCA series, came up through the O'Reilly series, and then got to Cup. His road map was based around oval racing. SVG, his roadmap is anything but oval racing until he got to NASCAR and then was just thrusted into the O'Reilly series after a part-time run in the 91 Trackhouse Project 91 car. And then after, I think only a year of that, he then jumped to Cup after that. And yet in the short amount of time that SVG has made the jump to America and joined Trackhouse full time and now races Cup Series, there's been times this year versus Connor Zilisch this year where SVG has ran top 10 on pure speed on ovals. It's not consistent. It's not every week, but there have been times where randomly he's got top 10 speed out of nowhere, top 5 speed at very small points out of nowhere. On these random ovals, the Coke 600 is a prime example. Where the hell did SVG come from? Why is he all of a sudden in the top 10 in the Coke 600 of all races? Connor hasn't found that at all. And I don't want to hear this, well, SVG's an older guy and he's more experienced and all this other. Connor has built himself around working his way up through NASCAR his entire life. And again, his path has been oval racing. ARCA Series to O'Reilly Series to Cup Series. A lot of his success have been on ovals. Yes, a lot of his success have been on road courses in those respective series, but he's found a lot of speed on ovals as well. I can also point to, if you want to compare not just Corey Heim and Connor Zilisch from this year, Ty Gibbs is a prime example. I talked about this before as well. Ty, it took him well over 100 starts before he actually found race-winning speed. And by the way, I made a comment about this because Denny Hamlin had posted something, or I should say Dirty Mo Media posted something that Danny Hamlin said, talking about how the whole needs 100 wins before, you find success or you find speed or you find wins or whatever. And he thought that that was BS. And he's like, it didn't take Chase Elliott 100 starts to get good. It didn't take, so-and-so 100 starts to get good. And I literally just replied in the comments section saying literally Ty Gibbs. Because it literally took Ty Gibbs over 100 starts before he got his first win. And by the way, to all those other people who did reply to me saying, Ty Gibbs had race-winning speed before this year. No, he didn't. No, he fucking didn't. A random flash of a top 5 run is not race-winning speed. Race-winning speed is running top 5 the whole fucking race, being as fast as the leader, leading laps, being at the front, being actually the leader for a majority of the race, and controlling the race. That is race-winning speed. Randomly falling into a top 5 out of nowhere is not race-winning speed. Up until this year, Ty Gibbs was the very obvious 4th guy in that Joe Gibbs camp. In no particular order, it was the 11, the 20, the 19, and the 54, well behind everybody else. And it was because of the fact of the path that he took. Unfortunately, with the way that NASCAR is right now, if you take the O'Reilly Series path, you are inherently hurting yourself. You are, in a way, disabling yourself for a good amount of time until you can completely reprogram your brain and reprogram how you race to adapt to the Cup Series, starting basically from scratch, from square one, whatever you want to say, while all these other guys who make the jump from the Truck Series all the way to Cup very obviously find speed right away. How is it not obvious? Corey Heim from this year, Carson Hocevar from years prior. He was the first real example of like, whoa, what the fuck? Why is this Truck Series guy randomly just getting thrown into a Cup car at Gateway, I think it was, or Nashville Super Speedway, one of the two. And all of a sudden he's just like really fast. He's like way faster than you would expect. He's like almost got top 10 speed, and this is like his first start. What the fuck is this? It's because of, again, the translation of vehicle to vehicle. So back to Connor Zilisch. His roadmap, in order for him to be successful, needs to be and should be designed for a long road. It is the same thing for Jesse Love. If he's going to be successful, that roadmap needs to be 4 years long at least. Connor Zilisch is not going to find success. By the way, he's not going to find success this year for the rest of the year. I'm not even sure if they go to another road course for the rest of the season. If they do, that'll be the next time maybe he has success. And he won't find it next year either. My argument is the 100 starts thing applies to O'Reilly Series drivers. So anybody who makes the O'Reilly Series jump to Cup Series, Jesse Love, Connor Zilisch, Austin Hill maybe in the 33, if you want them to have a chance at being successful in the Cup Series, they need minimum 100 starts. If you don't give them 100 starts, it's never going to work. Truck Series guys, different argument. They're coming from a type of vehicle that is much more similar racing style to the Cup Series. So in my eyes, yeah, if you wanted to make the argument that those guys get a shorter leash, maybe it's unfair to them. Some guys may take a little bit longer to develop. Regardless, the Truck Series, if you want to make the argument that that should be a shorter leash, fine. A little bit less time for those guys to figure it out. Granted, there's already been how many guys who have made the jump, like I said, from trucks to Cup, who have got it like that. Carson Hocevar, Corey Heim. Carson, by the way, he only had, one win in the Truck Series in all the years that he ran for Nice Motorsports in the 42 truck. He was not exactly known as like this, holy shit, he's so fucking talented guy. He's just winning race after race. It's not Corey Heim, where he's just dominant for a season or even multiple wins to where it's a real legitimate championship run for him. He runs well enough. And the fact that that guy got into a Cup car and figured it out like that tells me that Corey Heim getting into that 35 next year is going to figure it out like that. All these expectations that all these other people had for Connor Zilisch, where it was, Connor's he's going to rip off multiple wins in his first year and he's going to have a hell of a rookie season. That should be the expectation for Corey Heim. Corey Heim's expectation should be, okay, if you can find speed off the rip at San Diego and get your first win in a part-time, season at San Diego, you're going to get a full year. I expect maybe another win next year. And if not, some really good runs and maybe a chase berth for that 35 car versus what it has been. Now, there's also that argument that talk of Noah Gragson. He might be out of the four car. There's a chance he might not come back to front row. Well, I know that there's talk of Josh Berry taking that 4, but let's just say let's just bring up a scenario that may happen. Not saying it is, but may. What if Lane Riggs gets put in that 4 car next year instead of Josh Berry? Well, my expectations, seeing as the other truck guys who have ran pretty well, and Lane is having a pretty good season this season, and I believe he's still the points leader right now. I would expect, I'm not going to sit here and be like, you better win a race first year because it's still Front Row Motorsports. But you know what? I'm going to expect him to be close to his teammates. I'm not expecting chase berth. I'm not expecting race wins. I'm not expecting top 10s as a minimum. I'm expecting just race as well as your teammates off the jump. And that's again where it maybe becomes unfair, because maybe Lane Riggs is you need to give him a longer leash. He needs more time. But again, Truck Series guys are more ready, so the expectations are going to be higher. So I really hope that, going back to Connor Zilisch, I really hope that his leash isn't short. His leash should be as long as he needs. Now, if we get into 5, 6, 7 years down the road and still nothing is figured out, then okay, a different argument can be made. But it's going to be the same thing for anybody who comes up through the O'Reilly series from now on. By the way, Josh Berry, same thing. Too short of a leash. Maybe if he gave him more time, he did win at Vegas, but maybe if he gave him more time, he'd run a little bit more consistently. He'd run a little bit better. Maybe Noah Gragson's the same thing. Noah Gragson was another O'Reilly series guy. Maybe gave him maybe he's a late bloomer. Maybe if he gave him a longer leash, maybe he'd figure it out. I don't know. I don't think he will. That's my belief. But if we're just laying it out fair, the guys who get to that former Xfinity, now O'Reilly Series group, any one of those other guys who may make the jump in the next X amount of years to the Cup Series and may get an opportunity, the only way that said team is going to find success with said driver is they need to give him a long leash. And they need to give him time. So eventually down the road, Hayek Motorsports, when Stenhouse eventually retires, whether it's Sheldon Creed, Sammy Smith, Carson Quaffle, whomever, Sam Mayer, gets that opportunity in that car, they're going to need to give him a long leash. When Jesse Love gets to the 21, they need to say to themselves, okay, this young guy, he's not totally inexperienced, but he's less experienced. We need to give him a long leash to see if he can figure it out. And you need to give him 100 starts, minimum. If the day comes, say, next year, that Corey Day, now it's that big talk of Corey Day taking the 48 car away from Alex Bowman. If you want Corey Day, Hendrick Motorsports, if you want him to be successful, you need to give him 100 starts. Because I can already tell you, he's going to get into that 48, and for the first couple years, he's going to make you look stupid. Because he's going to run worse than Alex Bowman. That's a guarantee. Bowman has had how many years in the Cup Series? Has had how many years in this car particularly? He just ran pretty well this past weekend, had a top 10. He is going to, Corey Day that is, he's going to get into this 48, and he's going to look like Ty Gibbs the last how many years. And everybody is going to dog on Hendrick Motorsports the same way everybody dogged on Joe Gibbs Racing. Why are you putting this kid in this car? He sucks dick. He's no fucking good. He's slow as shit. He's awful. Why are you giving him a chance? He was not even very good in the O'Reilly Series. Why is he getting this opportunity? What is he, just Larson's butt boy? Like, this is what you're going to hear for years. And maybe, not a guarantee, but maybe after the 100 starts, he turns it on. Gets a win or two. Makes the chase. Looks like Ty Gibbs, where he's top 5 in points right now. Then all of a sudden, all those people shut the fuck up real quick. All those people who sat there and talked shit about Corey Day, they'll be quiet very quick. And I never said anything. But as long as you're willing to eat shit for all those years of him running terribly and not getting good finishes and basically, I don't want to say wasting a car, but kind of wasting a car because the car won't make the chase, won't compete for a championship. It'll be basically a developmental car for the next how many years in the hopes that he figures it out. As long as you're patient, it might work. But if you're not, you're sending these guys to slaughter. If you're not going to be patient and not give them time, you're just killing these guys' careers. They'll all end up like Harrison Burton, who, granted, I don't think Harrison's the greatest, but had a short stint in the 21, never really figured it out, was never very good, and now all of a sudden he tries to go back to the O'Reilly Series, and there's nothing for him. Now he's racing for Sam Hunt Racing and schlumming it up there, trying to figure it out and stay afloat. The same thing might happen to Josh Berry now. I understand that there's 2 open seats at RCR, but it's not a guarantee that Josh is going to be picked for those spots. There might be somebody in the Truck Series that Richard is looking at saying, we like this guy. We want to give him a shot. And they might pass over the guy who's 35 for some 20-some-year-old kid in the hopes that he develops a bit faster and develops into something. So I really hope that Connor gets time. You know, and I don't see the some people that think that like Connor's going to the 48. I might eat my words on this. I just don't see Trackhouse letting him go this early. I would hope that Justin Marks and the Trackhouse group would be smart enough to understand, look, this kid was in the O'Reilly series. He needs time. I hope that Connor is voicing this, saying, hey, I just raced, for the last how many years, an extremely different car that raced extremely differently. I need more time, not to mention the fact that SVG is probably going to back him up and say, yeah, that thing was way different. He just needs more time. He's not going to the 48. I don't believe that. I think he is staying right where he's at. And he's going to stay in the 88 car and try to develop as best he can. For the time being. A couple years down the road, maybe Trackhouse doesn't improve their stuff. Connor jumps ship to somebody else. There's a chance of that. But for the time being, he's not going anywhere. That's my belief. And I think what's worst about all of this, I'll say this just to put a bow on this Connor Zilisch thing. What's worst about this whole situation for Connor specifically is he hasn't even gotten track time. He's gotten more time in the car during practice in some of these races than the actual race. And it's not like, again, 1, 2, 3, like this has happened multiple times throughout this entire season. And you can hear it on the radio, like the one this past weekend wasn't even his fault. It's just wrong place, wrong time. Other times it's been his fault, yeah, but this one wasn't his fault. He's just sitting in the wrong spot. And that is the worst thing about this, is the fact that he is a young guy who really what he truly needs is just time in the car. I don't care how close the simulator is to real life. I don't care how much you can, make seem real in some high-tech simulator that they have at their shop or on iRacing or whatever. There is truly nothing that you can simulate like just being in the car itself. There's nothing that you can compare it to. There's nothing close. And that's why him being in the car and running just all the laps is so important. And yet he's not getting that. And he's not getting it at the tracks, again, that he struggles at the most. The ones he needs the track time the most at. And it's not even like, oh, I only got 50 laps and then got wrecked. No, it's like, dude, I made it out of turn 2 and I'm dead. Not even like lap 2. It's like I made it through turns 1 and 2 one time, and then now I'm in the inside wall dead. That is only going to stunt him more. Because now, congratulations. Yeah, you ran some practice laps at Chicagoland, but you basically got no time in an actual race. So in reality, you really learned nothing. And now you got to go into Chicagoland next year, basically at the same point that you started this year. And that's happened at how many other tracks already this year? I don't want to say he's in trouble, but this is only going to stunt his growth that much more, which concerns me majorly. Anybody who is hyped up as much as he was is inherently not going to meet expectations. I mean, by anybody. Was he ever... is he going to be the next Jeff Gordon or the next Kyle Larson where he's just that good? No. Do I think that maybe over time he has the chance of winning a championship? Sure. But gone are the days of somebody rolling in there winning 4, 5, 6 championships. Being an all-time great like this and dominating as much as he is. It just hasn't happened. And there's a lot of decently good talent across the board in the Cup Series right now. And especially in the position that he's in, by the way, He's not one of the big three. So unless he jumps ship to one of the big three, it ain't going to happen. He either needs to go to Penske, Gibbs, or Hendrick. And if it's not one of those three, then it isn't happening. Oh, but what about 2311? Yeah, 2311's fast right now, just like Furniture Row was how many years ago? They were fast for a moment. Just like Roush for their moment, fucking 20 plus years ago was fast. You know, Stuart Haas was one of the hottest teams for a moment there. Look at them. What are they? Gone. Disintegrated. All it takes is for Michael Jordan to just not think it's worth doing anymore and just leave. You think he's so committed? You think anybody here is so committed? These teams roll in and out so quickly. How fast was Pitbull just not committed anymore and he left? And Trackhouse has fallen apart since he left because the money stopped rolling in. So unless Connor wants to win a championship that badly, I mean, you better jump ship if you want to win a championship. You want to find real success. Spire, that's another one. Prime example. Hey, Carson is running crazy good. Top 10 in points still. Sure, he's had his ups and downs this season, but he's won a race. He's had race-winning speed. He's very good. Team's been pretty good. Will he win the championship this year? Pfft, absolutely not. And I love Carson. Will Spire probably ever win a NASCAR Cup Series championship? Maybe one. Maybe. If all the stars align and everything goes right, maybe. But what are the chances of that? Extremely slim. Extremely slim. 2311 looked like they were the hottest team this year. By the way, I was just talking about them a second ago. Tyler Reddick has fallen apart over the last how many weeks? Nobody's going to be able to... That 45 car is going to stay in the points lead the whole season. They got a 100-some point lead. Yeah, how's that point lead? I thought they were just going to run away with it. I thought it was a guarantee they were going to be the regular season champion. Rolling into the chase with a 25-point lead over whoever was in second. Yeah, that vanished pretty quick, didn't it? Those 5 wins that he had, the advantage he had there just went away like that. These other teams, these other players, they get hot streaks, they get hot, they get fast at certain times, and then it just peters out. It's not sustainable. Like Joe Gibbs or Hendrick or Penske. It's not sustainable. I haven't listened to the clip, but Brad Keselowski talked about, I think going into this weekend, about how he's disappointed in Chevy and Ford because Toyota shares all of, this is just summarizing it basically. Toyota shares all of the data and everything equally amongst all the Toyota teams. Equally amongst Joe Gibbs, they do to Legacy. Same thing with Legacy, they do to 2311. I don't buy that. I don't buy that Toyota's the only one that gives everything to everybody. Brad's pissed because Ford gives superficial treatment to Team Penske, as they always have. By the way, when he was in that 2 car, he had no problems with it back then. But now that he's a part owner with RFK, obviously he's going to have a problem with it. And yes, absolutely. Is that true? Yes, 1,000%. Does Chevy favor Hendrick way more than any other Chevy team? Probably. Yeah, 100%. Everybody has to basically go to Hendrick. And this is my opinion. Everybody has to basically go to Hendrick in order to get what they need from Chevy. And Hendrick just gives what they want to everybody else. Maybe not RCR, but RCR is getting the fucking bottom of the barrel shit. And that's pretty obvious to me. They haven't ran well in God knows how many years. As long as I can remember. So, sorry, I got distracted by something. So, you know, if Connor wants to go win a championship, he's got to go somewhere else. That's just the end of it. So, that being said, let's dive into more stuff that happened from this past weekend at Chicagoland. The SVG versus Austin Hill plus Carson Hocevar versus Zane Smith thing. I'm going to play a quick clip from DBC as far as the Hocevar Smith thing. I'm going to all encompass this together. So this is not going to be a one-for-one thing. But I wanted to play this really quick. There's a couple clips, actually. So let's play this one. This first one from DBC coming out of this past weekend talking about Carson Hocevar.
I hate talking about the 77. I really do. But because he driving like a lunatic in the beginning of the race, man. By the time lap 30, there's nothing left of his car to go fast.
So that's Hocevar? That's who you're talking about?
Yeah, Hocevar, yeah.
We've all been there. You can't win on the first lap, and you got to run all the laps.
I mean, look at the great finishes that...
No shit. Oh, my God. Like, I hate that line. I hate that line because it is so... Oh my God, so insightful and so smart for him to say. In order for you to win the race, you can't win it on the first one, and you have to actually run all the laps. When has there ever been a race where somebody won the race without running all the laps? Oh, never? Oh my God, that's so deep. And you mean they don't throw the checkered flag on the first lap? Oh my God, that is so smart. Thank you. I didn't know that. Thank you.
That he's had this year. He drove clean races, right? We said it. Well, he didn't run into anybody. Oh, guess what? He ran good.
My buddy Ross Chastain, y'all used to talk about him a little bit like that, and you don't really talk about him.
Well,
anymore,
that's because he doesn't do that anymore.
I think
it's not because he just doesn't do that shit anymore. It's because he's slow. Number one, he's slow, but also number two, he also doesn't do that shit anymore. You don't want to know why? He's going to say, Tommy's going to say his opinion. But my opinion is, it's because y'all got in his head. Y'all got in his head, and he says that he doesn't care, but I think he does. And it's shown that he cares. And even if he didn't care what DBC people said, or any of these other people said, hey, Mr. Hendricks sat him down and said, buddy, you got to stop hitting my cars. And then all of a sudden he just backed off of everybody. He doesn't fuck with anybody now. He's a different driver. He's not the same guy. That's why he's just another nameless, faceless person in the crowd. Is that it's not because he doesn't run into people. It's because he changed himself in the way that he drove and he's not as aggressive. You can be aggressive and not hit people. You can be aggressive and not spin people. You can put people in bad positions. You can rough people up. You can upset people in that way. But it's not just, oh, I just run into you and I flat out wreck you. You can be aggressive in that way and still be clean. You can be aggressive as in, I'm just going to put you in a bad spot and still be categorized as a clean racer and not wreck people's shit. So, but I think it got in his head and he just drives like a completely different person now. But what does Tommy think about Ross?
Ross is not being as aggressive as he used to be. One, because right now he doesn't have the car to do it. And number two, I think he's smart enough now, and you're hearing other drivers talk about him, they miss him up there. He's in a nice, safe spot in his career finally, right?
Yeah, right. The real safe spot being fucking 20-somethingth every week. I don't know how that's safe. To me, that sounds like you're asking to get fired. Let's ask the smartest people in the frickin' room. Jeff Gluck and Jordan Bianchi on the SVG side of this.
Where do we go from here? We saw what happened earlier this year with Ryan Preece and Ty Gibbs at Texas, another mile and a half racetrack. Is NASCAR step in here and penalize SVG for this?
The problem is they have set a weird precedent with a premeditated radio chatter thing,
which did not exist in this case.
Right. Like, let's just take away all the quotes. It appears to me that SVG wrecked Austin Hill intentionally and got retaliation for being taken out previously. He's saying, I didn't do it. So that is one thing where NASCAR says, okay, well, we don't have that. There was no premeditated radio chatter. So we don't have that. You're going to have Richard Childress in their ear saying, Austin Hill last year at Indianapolis, we never admitted a thing. We denied it. Right?
That was a right hook, though. But there is a fundamental difference between, when you hook somebody, you hook somebody. Like, that is you cannot. This was he just drove straight into it. Like, that to me is I have a hard time comparing one to the other.
Either way, like, it's an intentional action. Now, the intentional action on a right rear hook results in a suspension. The intentional action on what we saw there, like with the Preece thing, that's not a suspension, but it is a points penalty. I could feel that being justified in a points penalty. However, NASCAR could easily say and justify to themselves and everyone else, we don't have any evidence, or the evidence there would be to look at SMT data, which we don't have access to. Somebody's going to go look at it and say, yeah, he never let off the gas, or he steered into this, or I don't know what you'd really do. I mean, he just kind of ran through him, just as Zane Smith ran through Hocevar. Just as it with Texas, where you had two incidents somewhat similar, right? With Kyle Busch and John Hunter Nemechek, that whole deal, and the Ty Gibbs, Ryan Preece thing, whatever. One was penalized, one wasn't. Could we see that here? Could we see neither penalized? I'm not sure, but I think from NASCAR's standpoint, they could sort of go either way with the justification for it. And ultimately, I'm going to guess they probably won't.
So if there's I don't agree with this guy a lot. Not those two that just spoke. I'm not talking about that, but there's somebody else here. I do not agree with this guy on a lot of things, but if there's one thing that he said that I somewhat agree with, mostly agree with, I have to play this clip, and this kind of somewhat mostly summarizes my thoughts on all of this chatter about should somebody be penalized, should somebody not be penalized, all this other stuff. Take it away, Denny.
I'm torn on these wrecks, right? Do I think that it's cool that someone goes and just wipes someone out? No. But I'm also a very firm fan of self-policing. And I think that has to be a thing in the sport, because if you can't punch someone in the face without getting a fine, if you can't handle it off the racetrack, which I'm not really in favor of that, you got to let people self-police on the racetrack. And this is how you self-police. You let someone know, you with me, and you're going to get it. You're going to get it. And so just think about that before you with me, or you wreck me, or you run into me. So this is what NASCAR racing has been for quite some time, is a self-policing sport. And it just got in a weird spot over the last 5 to 6 to 7 years. Then we started talking about, well, these are deliberate wrecks. These are intentional wrecks, and we have to penalize that.
It's like a very passive-aggressive way to settle your beef on the racetrack. Because you can't say, oh, yeah, that's payback, right?
No.
You have to say, oh, sorry, the Austin Hills people are nice people. Sorry that happened.
Yes.
Yes.
I said last week, right, the data shows intent. The data would argue that SVG went into the corner with no intent to slow up. It's not like there was a hole there.
If this is over the line and you're going to fine or deduct points from whoever, then can you guys even police yourselves at all then?
No, that's the negative, right? Is if you get a penalty of any sort, it's like, how am I supposed to get this person back? You know what I mean? It just gives free reign to let people do whatever they want with no repercussion.
If Austin Hill clearly retaliates next week or in the near future, then there's going to be okay, NASCAR's going to have to step in.
Why?
And stop this.
That's how it used to happen, is a wreck, a payback, maybe another wreck, and then they sit you down and say, we're done with this shit.
Right.
Y'all got to stop.
You each got your shot.
You got to stop now.
Yeah. That is usually how it went. And that's how it should go. I hate hate with a passion this idea that the governing body of this sport needs to act like the FIA of F1. And if something happens on track that is what's the word I'm looking for here? That is, to somebody is unfair or unjustified or maybe intentional, that therefore the governing body needs to step in and do something about it. FIA has, you step over the line too much in some way, shape, or form. You don't color within the lines. Well, we're going to give you a time penalty, or we're going to dock you this or dock you that or whatever. And they get their hands in there when somebody gets, quote, too out of line. And that's the way that they have always done it. There's plenty of F1 fans, by the way, that aren't fans of that hate that shit, that are vocal about it, that hate the FIA, think they're a bunch of idiots, and they don't know what the fuck they're doing either. So to copy what F1 does and say, oh, this is foolproof, this just works just fine, we'll just copy what they do, that doesn't work. Doesn't even really work for F1 very often. So that's not the move. And then again, this is the problem that the governing body of NASCAR has created. In one instance, as this is stereotypical NASCAR, in one instance of somebody doing the same thing that somebody else does, and one person gets a penalty and the other person doesn't, is stupid. And it ruins credibility for the governing body. So that then when the governing body wants to step in again in the future, people are immediately not going to want to hear or see from them and don't want them involved because they can't make a good decision. They can't make the right decision. They can't see two situations that are the same and give both situations the same result. Either no penalty or penalty. They have done this my entire life. Something as simple as the double yellow line rule at super speedways has been a point of contention amongst all fans as long as I've been alive, because there have been constant times where somebody is either, quote, forced below the yellow line, and yet because they're, quote, forced, they aren't penalized. But yet somebody else who gets forced below the yellow line in the same way will get penalized completely differently. One person who does the same thing gets a penalty. The other person who does the same thing doesn't. Happens constantly in this sport. It is not just person dependent. Like I'm sitting here saying that NASCAR does favorites, by the way, they have and they always will. But put that aside, even when favorites aren't in play, even when your favorite driver like a Chase Elliott or a Dale Earnhardt Jr. isn't in play in this situation where they might want to lean towards the fan favorite to give them, a little bit better of an outcome so the fans are going home happier, even put that aside, even if it's two middle-of-the-road mundane drivers who are middle-of-the-road mundane as far as fandom, and they're just nameless, faceless people in the crowd, they can't govern that situation the same either. And so when you have a situation like we saw at Chicagoland, where both times, in my opinion, it seemed like somebody was hunting for payback. This is just my opinion. I believe that SVG drove into the corner with intent to maybe not completely wreck Austin, but to rough him up in a way that would send a message. I think the same thing was with Zane Smith and Carson Hocevar. Now, again, I don't know what happened laps prior on the Hocevar-Zane Smith thing, but kind of like how Tommy was saying, I wouldn't be surprised As you also saw, by the way, in the in-car camera that they showed with Hocevar after he got wrecked or during him being wrecked, he was driving out of his mirror completely. Anybody who was getting a run on him, I 1000% believe he was playing the game of, if you're going to go to the bottom lane, I'm going to stare at this camera that I have, that's my mirror, and I'm just going to follow you wherever you go. So if you try to go to the bottom, I'm just going to shoot this thing to the bottom and block you. If you go up top into that third lane or the second lane, I'm going to sit in that lane and throw a bunch of dirty air on you as best I can. I 1000% believe he was doing that. And probably Zane, also, by the way, not having the greatest history with Carson in the Cup Series, probably thought to himself, this fucker's doing this to me again. He's just, I don't like him in the first place. He's sitting here aero blocking me. I'm faster than him. Fuck this guy. And just went and just took him out. Took him out with intent. Now, by the way, Zane, if you ever hear this, I think Landon Castle said it best. I think the number one rule of stock car racing is don't wreck somebody else, or don't wreck yourself while wrecking somebody else. So, kind of failed on that front when it comes to Zane Smith. But regardless of that, whatever. I've been a big Carson Hocevar fan. I'm not going to sit here and say that he's been a saint. And I don't think Carson Hocevar would sit here and say that he's been a saint. And him and Zane Smith have had plenty of run-ins in the past. And so if Zane Smith got frustrated with Carson, hey, it's racing. If Carson really felt like he was slighted, well, guess what? He's probably going to do something back to Zane then. Until, again, the sport steps in and tells him to stop. That was always the way that it went. That was always the protocol. Was NASCAR always kind of had this idea of boys have at it. They didn't always verbalize it. Like during that time period when I was younger, where they literally verbalized it and said, boys have at it. But they always had this unsaid rule of, if something happens to you on track, or you feel slighted, or you feel like something happened to you that was unfair, it's on you to get that person back. So if Earnhardt roughed you up and put you in a bad spot and hurt you too bad, and you feel like you got slighted too bad, well, it's on you to either A, go talk to him, B, address it in any way, shape, or form with the team, or C, do it on track and get him back. And do it in a way that isn't going to ruin my sport. If you stepped over the line, that's where we'd pull you in the hauler and tell you, you stepped over the line, you went too far, don't do that again. And again, like Denny Hamlin described, that is how it went. It was somebody does something to somebody. A driver does something to B driver. B driver then feels slighted, so they do something back sometime later to A driver when they get the chance. A driver now is pissed at B driver again, because why the hell did B driver just hit me? So A driver goes back and hits B driver again. And then that's where the sport sees something devolving that's not going to stop. And so then therefore they step in and go, A and B, cut this shit out. You ain't going to ruin my race. But too many guys as of late have been comfortable with just letting it go, not doing anything about it. And the sport as a whole also, on top of all this, is too strict when it comes to this stuff. If you want to say, okay, if somebody gets right hooked intentionally in the corner, straightaway, whatever, intentionally just hooks somebody and puts them in the wall. If you want to say that's a penalty, fine, whatever. I'm not even a big fan of that either. There have been how many instances of the past of whether intentional or unintentional, somebody has right hooked somebody. There's that famous clip between Darrell Waltrip and Dale Earnhardt where they're racing side by side and on the white flag, Dale just fucking, and I believe unintentionally, just hooks Darrell Waltrip going in the corner into turn 3 on the last lap, and they just both end up wrecking each other. Unintentionally, but there have been other times where people have done it intentionally. So this is why I'm saying, if NASCAR today wants to say we want no part of that, we don't want people right hooking people, that's too dangerous, that's way too over the line, and so therefore, if you do that, that's a penalty, fine. I am willing to accept that. But what SVG did, what Zane Smith did, what they were talking about, the Ty Gibbs, Ryan Preece thing, that stuff, to me, shouldn't be a penalty. It should not be a points, monetary, owner's points, anything that affects their points or money going towards a championship. That, to me, is over the line on NASCAR's part. And then, therefore, it is in the victim, in this case, whoever that is, it's in their court to do something about it. So, Ty Gibbs, you feel slighted by Ryan Preece taking you out at Texas? Well, do something. Fix it. Get him back. And do it the right way. Don't right hook him, because then there's a penalty. But if you find him again in the next race, well, just boot him out of the way. Just do what SVG did. Or do what Zane Smith did. Just don't wreck yourself along doing it. But if you're sick and tired of somebody, and as Hamlin said, if you can't hit him off the track, if you can't fight him off the track, if the sport isn't going to do anything about it, well, then what else are you left to do? What else are you left to do other than get yours? Because in the time where, again, somebody can just keep rolling over somebody without repercussions, without anybody doing anything back to that person, because if they do, then they're penalized. I don't even care if it's Carson Hocevar. That's just dumb. I don't even care if it's Carson Hocevar who's going out there. If he went out there and started just running people, and I mean running people over, intentionally, just boom, 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 just running people over left and right, and somebody tried to get back at him, and then NASCAR went, whoa, 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 that's not okay. That's a penalty. You're suspended a week. Here's a monetary fine. I'd even have to sit here and be like, that's fucking dumb. And so that's why, again, in this case, hey, Austin didn't just screw SVG once. He did it twice. He did it at Pocono, and then he unintentionally took out SVG at San Diego as well. So yeah, if I see some dipshit from the O'Reilly series who's getting an opportunity just because the guy who used to drive that car passed away, and he's making an ass out of himself around me and affecting my chance at making the chase, I'm going to be pissed, and I'm going to say, fuck this guy, and I'm going to boot him the first chance I get. To send a message to him to say, hey, shithead, you've been driving over your head and making an ass out of yourself, and you're affecting me more than most other people as of late, and I'm not going to take it. That is the right move. That is how things should be. Because, see, here's the thing. It creates entertainment. Fighting in hockey is a part of the sport. It is not the whole thing. It is the cherry on top of this cake that is presented to you. Okay? It's a nice little treat on top of it. It's not the whole reason we're playing the game. It just happens every now and then. We're in a race. The goal is not to just throw people out of the way and just dump people left and right. But if somebody wrongs you, you are in all intents and purposes in the right to take out some type of vengeance or some type of attempt to get even with said person. And the minute that you take that piece away, the interest level of this sport goes down. The entertainment factor in this goes down. I, to my core, will never sit here and say that the governing body of this sport should have a role in penalizing somebody monetarily or points-wise based off of actions done on the track. Again, the only exception I will make is if somebody intentionally right hooks somebody in a malicious attempt to either really hurt them or to really put them in a bad way. That I will say fine. Not okay. Even still, I'd say both are pretty fucking, they can hurt you pretty bad. A wreck is a wreck, guys. These cars are not exactly the most comfortable things to hit the wall in. Okay? These things are stiff as a board. They don't give. They're hurt to get into wrecks with. So it doesn't matter if you get right hooked into the wall or you get fucking shoved into the wall like Austin Hill did. This shit hurts. Either way. So look at Christopher Bell. Broke his wrist in the Michigan wreck with Chase Elliott. And that wasn't a right hook. That was just got in there and hit him in the left rear and then shot him up the track. Completely unintentional. But somebody could do that same exact move intentionally, where they go dive into the corner under somebody and intentionally slide up and hit them in the left rear and shoot them up the track in that same way. That's pretty dangerous. But that's where I make the argument that we should not differentiate between if somebody right hooks somebody or if somebody just flat out wrecks anybody in any way. Any wreck can be extremely hurtful. This shit is not safe. This shit is dangerous. No matter how safe they make the cars. People can get hurt. No matter how you hit the wall. So I would say, in my opinion, right hooking, okay, then the driver's definitely going to have the right to, when he finds you, beat the ever-loving shit out of you. Or any crew members or whomever are part of that team that had that driver happen to him, they'd have the right to go find that driver and beat the ever-loving shit out of him. In that case, fine. But I still caution more on the side of, if I were in charge, no penalties to anybody. And I would turn to Carson Hocevar. I would turn to Austin Hill. I would turn to Ty Gibbs at the Texas thing. I would turn to Denny Hamlin when he got right hooked by Chase Elliott. I'd turn to all these people and I'd say, you're hurting? You feeling slighted? You want me to do something about it? I'm not going to do anything. You do it. You either go find that guy and you make it known that you're pissed at him by putting your fist in his face, or do it on the track where it probably hurts him even more. Because guess what? You go punch him in the face in the garage area, you still got all those points. You go hurt him on the track, well, then you actually might hurt him in some way, shape, or form that might actually sting. I'm in the camp of no penalties, if it's not clear. One more thing about Chicagoland I wanted to talk about that I'm over on. You know, I was talking about the cars earlier. I wanted to touch on this. The fact that two instances happened, and I know that this has been a thing, but it kind of really just hit me this weekend, and it's not talked about. This is not talked about nearly enough. anymore. It used to be talked about more earlier when the next gen car was still new and people were bugged by certain things. But this has just been kind of, swept under the rug, really, or just kind of forgotten about. The 2 wrecks that happened, that Ryan Preece and Kyle Larson were involved in. Larson was the self-spin into the grass, and Preece was the, again, victim of the lap 1 stuff with John Hunter, I guess that was. Both guys didn't hit anything, spun out into the infield, got their car clean. Nothing wrong with Kyle Larson's car other than being stuck in the grass. Nothing wrong with Ryan Preece's car besides flat tires. And yet, because of that, and because of the fact that the profile of these tires are so small, and these things are so low to the ground, that you lose control. Either you're in your fault or not. You lose control, and therefore, because you're spinning sideways in the way that the wheel is not designed to be used, obviously, your tires blow, all 4 of them usually, and because of that, you are stuck, and you can't go anywhere. And because you can't go anywhere, like Ryan Preece, you lose 4 fucking laps on the field because you have to wait for the tow truck to get to you, figure out that you are 4 tires flat, so you can't go and you're stuck, back up the thing to your car, undo the tape that's on the front, exposing the little hole for where they can hook onto you, hooking onto your car, slowly picking you up, driving you slowly back to the garage area, dropping you off either in the garage area, at your garage stall, or on pit road, allowing your team to then, and only then, jack the car up, put 4 tires on, just for you to then just turn and drive away. And your car's fine. You got no damage on it. The only damage is the underbody damage by being dragged. There's no external damage that is shown that we can see. And because of the fact that either you made a mistake or somebody else made a mistake, you lose 4 laps for that? And I guess, hey, NASCAR's argument could be, well, there's no real solution. What are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to say, okay, from the time that you spin, you're still on the lead lap, even though all these other guys are pacing and then therefore using more fuel than you? So then, it becomes an unfair advantage that you spun and then you have less fuel than everybody else, but yet you're on the same lap. I get that. But why not fix the fucking tires then? Why not put inner liners in this thing? Why not make the car so low to the ground? Why not make it to where the car needs to be a certain height off the ground? And, oh, by the way, make it to where, again, because of the fact the car's not so low to the ground, therefore you can drive back. Might rip the car up to shit, but at least you can be on the lead lap, or at least only lose 1 lap versus 4. The Ryan Preece one, to me, is even more egregious because, hey, if you want to make the argument, hey, Larson made a mistake himself. He spun all on his own. By the way, a lot more it happens a lot more than people want to admit. Completely spins on his own, makes a mistake, just overdrives the thing off 4, spins into the grass. By the way, spun into the grass. So that was part of the reason why he was stuck, was because it had rained for most of the weekend, so the grass was wet, so he couldn't drive out. And okay, Fine. If you want to make that argument about Kyle Larson, that's fair. He loses a couple laps because he made a mistake himself. Whatever. Still not the biggest fan of it. Still think that if he didn't spin into the grass and say he spun onto just, like the backstretch thing like Ryan Preece, I still think he should be able to drive away just fine and not have any issues as far as just trying to drive his car back to pit road. But the Ryan Preece thing really bothers me because it's lap 1. He did nothing wrong. He did nothing wrong in that scenario. He was not the reason why that wreck happened. John Hunter just ran him out of room, and then Ryan ends up getting spun in the process, hitting Connor Zilisch. Connor gets destroyed, but Ryan Preece saves it to where he doesn't hit anything. He just got 4 fucking flats. He did the right thing by saving his car, keeping it clean. And yet because happenstance of him blowing tires, he's now stuck and he has to get towed back to pit road and is 4 laps down and then spends most of the rest of the race trying his best over the next X amount of cautions to get his laps back. That to me is a joke. It's a joke. It's not in the situation now to where it could affect a championship because we're not in the championship 4. But even still, it could affect a championship in a small way where, again, somebody who's a guy like a Tyler Reddick or a Denny Hamlin, somebody makes a mistake in front of them or they make a mistake to where they spin onto the infield, same situation as Ryan Preece. They get stuck because they blow all 4 tires and they lose 4 laps and they don't get those 4 laps back because it happens in, say, stage 3. And there's no cautions for the rest of the stage and now they're fucked. Doesn't matter how fast they are. Doesn't matter how many people they pass. They're 4 laps down. They can't make up that time. It is something that I don't understand why we just have ignored and we've just forgotten about. For some reason, I don't know why, but for some reason we just have. And that is something that absolutely needs to be fixed. And yet it's not even being talked about anymore. It used to be talked about, but now it's just a part of the race now. We've just accepted that it's just a part of the race now. It's another stupid just joke of this Cup Series car that has had problem after problem after problem the entire existence of this thing. And now it's almost just like we've given up on trying to solve the problems. We've given up on trying to solve this problem. And for no reason. Literally no reason. So I feel bad for both of those guys. I felt bad for Larson, and I felt even more bad, like I said earlier, for Ryan Preece. Sure, was he not going to win the race? Yeah. Was he probably not going to run very well? Sure. But it doesn't change the fact that it still set him back how much for no reason. Other than stupid people making stupid decisions with stupid ingenuity. Anyways, I'm going to wrap here. Hour and 30 some minutes in, so you get your fill of me here. I appreciate everybody listening. Hope you all enjoyed this week's episode. Hope you all enjoyed, like I said, go back and listen to last week's episode. That hour and a half plus, solid. I highly suggest you go back and listen to last week's episode talking about Carson Hocevar. It wasn't just about Hocevar, by the way. It was about so many other different things. About the sport as a whole, the state of it, all the other drivers, the owners, everybody. It was a rant on everybody. It may say a Carson Hocevar rant, but he was just a part of that very large rant. He was just the subject of most of it. But it encompassed a lot. So That being said, once again, back the same time next week, Tuesday at 6 a.m. Central Time. Once again, next week we're going to Atlanta, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So, should be a very fun, interesting race. It is Atlanta. A drafting track, which should bring calamity and chaos as always. Hopefully, it'll be rain-free and a fun race to watch. By the way, shout out to TNT. I know people aren't, people praise Prime, but I've thought the TNT broadcasts have been better. I mean, it's comparing it to Fox, so it's like comparing, literally anything to a gigantic pile of shit. So it's not exactly the greatest, competition. But I've enjoyed the TNT broadcast. I've enjoyed the pre and post race stuff for TNT as well. And hopefully they'll do a pretty good job going into this weekend in Atlanta. But that being said, I hope you all enjoy the racing from this weekend here in Atlanta. And take it easy. I'll see you all next week.